Guys, this fish is worth $35,000. And that is because it is a Russian beluga sturgeon filled with caviar. The species of sturgeon that produces what is widely regarded as the finest, most expensive caviar on earth.
But we're not in Russia, we're in Vietnam.
Where there is this crazy plan underway to take over the global caviar trade. So today, we're going to explore the techniques used, find out about Vietnam's secret weapon, and at the end of this video, we're going to see how Vietnam's caviar stacks up to the world's best. These other ones were the only ones I could afford. In fact, this is probably the most expensive eating scene I've ever done. By doing a blind taste test, we'll even throw in some fake caviar to see if I'm any kind of a barometer at all. God damn, I hope I'm not wrong. Today, guys, we are walking through one of the very first caviar farms in Vietnam. Who knew that they did caviar in this pretty hot country, to be honest? We start out processing sturgeon for the local market. These fish are netted and loaded into plastic bags alive with some water and an ice block or two. It's really not that dissimilar from how you'd see fish bagged at your local pet store, minus the ice blocks. Alright, before we get to the breeders, it turns out that even at a giant sturgeon farm up here in the mountains of Dalat, that not all of these fish can be turned into egg producers. For instance, there are male sturgeon. And what happens to them is they get turned into meat. Ultimately, this is still just a general fish farm, but with some pretty high-ticket fish. I'm telling you, it is a good thing that sturgeon have delicious eggs because those things look like a nightmare to fillet. Dinosaurs for real, bones everywhere. I don't know if they'd be the best eating fish. So behind us are some of the fish that are believed to be pregnant, if that's the right word when you're talking about fish. But you guys get what I mean. So, unlucky females today, they will be harvested and we will process their eggs for caviar. Wow, that's crazy, man. All right, guys, this is how these guys start out. This is about 6 months old. I've never held a sturgeon before. Oddly enough, the actual fertilized eggs that are kept, that are grown out to be this sturgeon in front of me, come from Germany. So from farms in Germany, fertilized eggs are imported, grown out to this in about 6 months. And we will then see the progression of this sturgeon through to the fully grown adults with eggs that we will process today. I'm gonna put this guy back. Ooh, man. That thing had kick. So in this juvenile breed out area, in this one pond, we have about 2,000 baby sturgeon. Kind of crazy. In one like this, there's maybe 500, I would say. This place is absolutely swimming in millions of dollars worth of fish. And it's pretty clear to me right away that this facility can do some serious volume, churning out thousands and thousands of sturgeon. You can see that all of these fish are really carefully tagged. They know exactly how many they have, at what age, at what stage. It's not just kind of like you chuck a bunch of fish in a pond, come back 15 years later, hope you got a bunch of fish eggs that you can make millions of dollars from. Nah, this seems to be a pretty well documented operation. This entire business runs off two main facilities. One large outdoor concrete ponded area and another inside a large shed. Both setups pipe water directly from a nearby spring. There's a waterfall there that's just a few minutes from the facility. It is beautiful. It is as fresh as you can get. It is absolutely icy, icy cold. So this pipe here is what makes this all possible. We sort of pipe down water from a nearby waterfall, filtering through all of the tanks, both outdoor and indoor. These natural water parameters are unchanged, and they provide the perfect water parameters for every species of sturgeon that they have ever attempted to raise here. All right, guys, a quick minute to talk about today's sponsor, Fishing Clash. Think of it as fishing, but with leaderboards, epic gear, and like way less mosquitoes. It's fun, competitive, and honestly, I have been playing it way more than I'd like to admit. You guys think you can catch one of these Russian sturgeon in Fishing Clash? I'd say the answer is yes, because you can catch just about everything in this game. Rare fish from exotic lagoons, icy fjords, and like everywhere in between. The best part, to me at least, is that you're competing. You can climb the leaderboards, challenge your friends, upgrade your gear, and build the ultimate fishing arsenal, legendary rods, crazy lures, the whole works. For someone like me, who barely gets to fish anymore, unless it's on camera, Fishing Clash has been the perfect way to kind of get that fishing fix. Sometimes I miss not living in Australia anymore. If you want to check it out, hit the link in the description or scan the QR code that is on screen right now. Don't forget to use my gift code FRASERA and you'll receive a $20 reward and a unique avatar to get you started. Try it out, let me know what your best catch is in the comments, and I will see you out there on the water. Here's the thing about caviar. It's just fish eggs, literally just sturgeon eggs soaked in salt. Everything else, all the other fish species, that's fake. The term has historically always been used to refer to sturgeon roe for a reason. Somehow, these little black pearls turned into the ultimate flex for the world's elite. People drop thousands of dollars just to spread a few fish eggs on a cracker. But it wasn't always this way. Back in ancient Persia, caviar was basically just fast food. Fishermen would pull these massive prehistoric looking sturgeon from the Caspian Sea, crack them open, and there you go, dinner. No champagne, no mother of pearl spoons, just good eating. But then the Russians got involved, and everything changed. You see, Russian nobles in the 1800s decided that caviar wasn't just food, it was fashion. And suddenly, every fancy dinner party from Moscow to Paris had to have these little black balls on the menu. It was a status explosion, an obsession. And the star of the show was Russian beluga caviar, the Rolls Royce of fish eggs. Finer, silkier, more expensive than anything else swimming. And that perception around it still exists in many ways today. And that, of course, is where things start to get messy. Turns out, when you're harvesting eggs from a fish that can take 25 years just to hit puberty, we're gonna run into problems, especially when people can't get enough of the stuff. And by the 1970s, the USSR had turned caviar into a global export. They were pulling sturgeon out of the Caspian like there was no tomorrow. And the numbers were quickly dwindling, despite the fact that the industry was in some way managed. Then the Soviet Union collapsed, and things went from bad to pretty much catastrophic. No more regulations, just desperate fishermen with boats to fill and a black market of buyers waving stacks of cash around. It was a recipe for extinction. The same waters that used to be swimming with sturgeon were turned into complete ghost towns. It was the end of the wild caviar industry. Countries had been doing this for decades, but this was the opportunity for farmed caviar to compete. Iran, which had been in the game, started pushing quality over quantity. China saw an opportunity and jumped in with both feet. They're now pumping out more than 60% of the world's farmed caviar. France, Italy, the US, Israel, everybody wanted a piece of this action. Here's the kicker though about modern caviar. Branding is everything. Companies like Petrosian and Caviar House built empires on reputation alone. They're not just selling fish eggs, they're selling luxury, tradition, exclusivity. A tin of their caviar comes with more certifications than a nuclear submarine. And now Vietnam is trying to muscle in on this billion-dollar industry. They're setting up massive sturgeon farms and promising premium quality at way lower prices.
Albino, wow. All right, these things are seriously strong fish. This is an albino sturgeon. I'm trying not to do too much damage to it because they're pretty damn valuable.
The most prized fish here are the albino sturgeon. 1 in 100,000. The caviar from these sells for simply staggering amounts. Some of these tanks house large, less promising looking individuals. They've reached this age because it's not quite possible to sex all sturgeon until they reach 6 or 7 years of age. So even once they reach a large size, males will be sent off to the market.
Maybe I should get him back in there. Whew. Oh my God, that's more valuable and slippery fish. This is like $30,000 worth of albino caviar right here. Let's get him back in the water. Man, that's crazy. So these fish here are sort of about 3 years of age. They're right about ready to see whether they have eggs or not. Oh my God, there's a bigger one. All right, so these white albino sturgeon, they're really no different in terms of the eggs, but the eggs are white, and that gives them extra value. I'm gonna try get this guy back. Again, no difference in taste, but infinitely more valuable. And I mean, obviously it's just because it's rare. Like, there just ain't that many albino sturgeon out there. Oh. Ah, the smell of ridiculously expensive fish.
It's just kind of like the ultimate flex, serving those white fish eggs on a bit of toast.
It is time to collect some of these ridiculously expensive eggs that Vietnam has been working so damn hard to bring to this country. We're gonna find out what all the fuss is about right now. All right guys, we have maybe 20 fish in front of us that we're ready to harvest today. Might not seem like that many, but when you think that each of these fish has maybe $35,000 worth of caviar inside of them, that's kind of a lot.
These fish are manhandled with some kind of specialist jiu-jitsu hold so that they don't damage the meat. It's probably something I should have learned before destroying one of those 1 in 100,000 fish.
All right, I'm gonna try to learn this fish technique. You sort of seem to have to grab it by the head and by the tail.
It's just a casual $30,000 worth of damage, guys. Don't tell the owner.
All right, I'm just pretty terrible at this. I don't know how they managed to pin it so well. It just seems like incredibly good technique by these guys. Really, really impressive stuff. That's right, he can do it. These fish were going crazy when I was holding them. Little did I know that you can kind of just put them in this wrestling strangler hold, pin their heads to their tail, and they ain't going anywhere. That is a pro technique. You've got to learn that. Fishermen out there, let me know if you've seen that before, because I've been fishing for years and that was news to me.
The fish themselves are collected from the tanks, quickly dispatched, bagged, and then driven over to the processing building. This is where the caviar collection process will be done. The place is scrubbed super clean.
We're currently brushing up all of the fish that we caught that are now ready for egg collection. Makes sense. It's kind of like a surgical theater, I guess.
First, the fish are completely bled out and left for a good 30 minutes.
Guys, it might look gruesome, but these fish have already been dispatched. Right now we are in the process though of bleeding them out. We remove the blood from the body, and in theory, there's not going to be any blood mixed in with the eggs, or like less of it, I guess.
They are then washed thoroughly so that no dirt, grime, slime, or anything like that can possibly end up on the eggs.
Hey, when they said they were going to clean the fish, I didn't realize they were going to use a power washer. High pressure water cleaning, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Smart.
Time to get serious. We don some sanitary gear, head to toe, and head back in.
Hey guys, here's the deal. We are currently sterilizing these fish as much as possible. We've gotten totally decked out in our surgical scrubs. The idea is to keep things as clean and as sanitary as possible so that we end up with the most pure caviar, untouched by the outer world as possible.
And an incision is made along the belly to expose the eggs. The roe sacks are then carefully removed and bagged. Along the way, these roe sacks are carefully checked for any impurities or imperfections.
From there, they're being passed through this window, through to the processing room where they will be pressed through a sieve and the caviar will be separated from the kind of like more mucousy material that connects the eggs together. What we're after is just those eggs and none of the rest of the gunk, because right now it's not something that you would want to eat. Alright guys, this is absolutely crazy. This is a 6-liter bag, and I would say this is a good, at least 5 kilos worth of eggs. Once I show you guys the staggering price these guys are selling for in tiny little 30 to 50 gram tins, then you will realize just how ridiculous this bag of eggs right is.
This entire bag that I'm holding is worth up to $10,000. From here, a roe sieve is used to separate the eggs from the egg sac. It's basically some kind of soft screen with the correct size mesh for the age and species of sturgeon. This ensures that the eggs go through, but no gunky stuff, and it's also soft enough to not break any of these incredibly delicate eggs. Now separated from the roe sacs, the eggs lose their kind of yellowy green mucus-like hue and become that classic deep caviar black brown. If you ask me, it's already looking pretty yummy.
Once the eggs have been extracted for the fish obviously will be sold for meat still. So they are placed back in this tray down here, and those guys will be headed to the market.
Even from the finest sturgeon specimens, there are hundreds of dead eggs or imperfect eggs in amongst the roe. The eggs are floated in water, causing the duds to surface to the top, at which point they are removed carefully.
You don't want to be paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a tin if they exist. So this is the process of carefully selecting them individually and removing them. Cái này khoảng bao nhiêu ký ạ?
More than 3 kilos.
The water is then strained, salt is added.
Simple process once these things have been salted and once the eggs have been carefully selected. Essentially, it is just spoonful into the tins, then flattened out perfectly, measured to ensure that it is exactly 50 grams each. And there we have it. But yeah, I feel like I'm in Breaking Bad or something, just dealing with high-end food items like this. It's semi-secretive business, nobody's talking at all. Again, it just makes me feel like a drug dealer. I don't know why.
But it just really felt down like this place was on complete lockdown. Everybody was focused on the purity and the condition of these eggs. After one day of processing, 20 fish turned into 240 tins of staggeringly expensive caviar.
Whoa. Alright guys, there we go. My first ever Vietnamese caviar eggs straight from the farm. We literally harvested these things maybe 10-15 minutes ago. Let's go. Really rich creamy flavor, salty, just melts in your mouth. Almost a tiny subtle bit of almost kelp behind it. Man, that is exceptional. Crazy. Those little tins that you're putting in, the 50-gram tins, how much do you sell those for, or how much do those retail for to the public?
Công ty là bán là 25 triệu một ký. Thì 50 gram vậy nó khoảng là 1 triệu 250. Nhưng mà nếu mà thị trường thật sự bán qua nhà phân phối là bán sẽ cao hơn.
Right, so it's pretty damn expensive. Oh wow. Here it is, 20 fish. There's about 12 kilos of caviar right here. We're absolutely swimming in this stuff here. $12,000 worth of caviar in one day. That is kind of wild. How long does it take from when you get a baby sturgeon until you can actually harvest the eggs?
Khoảng 4 năm tuổi là nó đã có trứng, là bắt đầu có trứng. Nhưng mà để mà khai thác cho nó số lượng nó lớn, nó tốt á, thì phải 6 năm trở lên.
How many fish do you typically harvest every week now that it's kind of peak season?
Trung bình một tuần thì tầm 20 kg là nhiều nhất ấy.
That's a lot. Hey, what do you think about the quality? Do you think that the caviar from here is the same as the caviar from Russia, let's say?
Số chuyên gia từ Nga tới nói là cái caviar ở Đà Lạt này nó rất là ngon, có thể ngon hơn ở Nga. Bởi vì cái nước nó tự nhiên. Còn ví dụ như ở châu Âu hay ở Nga người ta sử dụng cái hệ thống nước tuần hoàn. Cái smell, cái mùi của nó không có được giống như ở đây.
I can't wait to try this product. Thank you again for showing me around today. That was great. Vietnam's push into the caviar market was no accident. It was a calculated, government-backed move that began in 2005 with the help of cold-watered species could possibly take hold in Vietnam's tropical conditions. Their study on raising sturgeon forms in Vietnam laid this incredible groundwork. By 2008, just 3 years later, Vietnamese farms were producing the first sturgeon eggs. And this was a stunning achievement in a field where traditional producers like Russia had to wait 12 to 15 years, and countries like France had needed 30 years to see any kind of consistent results. This breakthrough immediately positioned Vietnam as having serious potential in the luxury caviar market. They were way behind, but they had an edge.
Ví dụ như ở Đà Lạt này, vùng cao nguyên Lâm Đồng này, Lang Biang này rất là phù hợp với nhiệt độ nước nó dao động là khoảng 15 độ đến 20 độ, rất là mát quanh năm và nuôi nó rất là hiệu quả. So với như châu Âu thì nó rất là lạnh.
Fish here mature and lay eggs in just 4 to 6 years. That's twice as fast as most of the cold weather climates in which they're typically farmed.
Recognizing this edge, the Vietnamese government pounced. By 2010, they had rolled out tax incentives, invested in sustainable aquaculture, and secured international trade agreements to boost exports. Sturgeon farming had spread to more than 25 different provinces, with hubs in Lam Dom, Lao Cai, Dalat, and Dak Lak, where pristine streams provided these just ideal conditions. By 2012, the production had already began to scale up. 305 tons of fish were being provided by the industry, proving some level of scale and viability. And by 2020, Vietnam had more than 10x this, turning out more than 3,700 tons of sturgeon annually, with over 3,000 kilograms of caviar being processed. Today, it is a top 10 producer worldwide. And to this day, the vast majority of the farming is for the meat. But the cat is kind of out of the bag now, and the money is really rolling in, chasing the inevitable caviar that will flow from these farms. The recent construction of a mega farm in Dak Lak is thought to be the world's largest sturgeon facility. It is designed to house more than 1 million fish, and it aims to produce more than 1,000 tons every year. Vietnam doesn't just have its eyes set on competing anymore, it plans to dominate. But none of this matters if it can't shake the branding, the stigma of being third world caviar. And in order to do that, the product has to shine. It's time for a taste test.
Time to see how this Vietnamese caviar stacks up against the biggest and best producers in the world. All right, guys, in maybe the most ridiculous eating scene that I have ever concocted, we have a bunch of different caviars to try here, and my mission today is to try and see if Vietnam's mission into the caviar industry has some grounds. Is Vietnamese caviar as good as other caviar? So the idea is I'm gonna put 4 different caviars here and blind taste test them, as if somehow I would actually be able to tell in any case. But the deal is this: we have Belugan hybrid caviar from Russia, widely regarded as perhaps the most prestigious, the OG Russian caviar. There's a QR code on front, I don't know what that means. Some Russian writing on the back. And luckily for us, the Vietnamese sturgeon that we have today is in fact Beluga sturgeon from Vietnam. So there will be a true comparison, the OG original Russian caviar versus the Vietnamese upstart, the competition. Boom. Next up, we have Italian caviar, white sturgeon caviar from Italy. I'm not really sure why we have Italian caviar here. It was probably just what was available in the supermarket, but at least it's kind of a brand that is typically associated with luxury, Ferraris, Italian designer clothing. Maybe the caviar as well is kind of considered up there in people's minds. We have, of course, our Vietnamese caviar from Sundale just down the road. We saw the entire process of this just earlier in this video. And then finally, to see if I have any idea what we're talking about at all, we have fake caviar. Can I tell the difference between any old fish eggs and caviar at all? Quite possibly not. In fact, this makes me a little bit nervous. It's not real caviar, it's nice and cheap. These other ones were the only ones I could afford. In fact, this is probably the most expensive eating scene I've ever done. All right, so the deal is this. We are gonna number each of these. 1 will be our Russian caviar. 2 will be our Italian, finest, luxurious caviar. 3 will in fact be our Vietnamese, Dalat grown Belugan caviar. And 4 is gonna be fake caviar. So we're gonna whack a little bit of this in each of these jars. Fake caviar, Sundale. Oh, am I even gonna be able to open this? Does anyone know how you open a caviar tin? Am I showing my ignorance? All right, we have our Vietnamese caviar. Bam, look at that. Let's put a healthy spoonful of that. Our Italian caviar. Oh no, I dropped some on the plate. Italian caviar loaded up. And finally, our Russian Belugan caviar, the OG. These, I mean, I shouldn't really be looking because perhaps it influences my mouthfeel. These are some pretty big eggs. Okay, here's the deal. I'm gonna blindfold up, put these below the table, and my cameraman is going to mix up these various caviars, these eggs in front of me, and I will blind taste test each of them from left to right, and we see which one is the finest. Actually, we don't. We just see which one is my favorite one, and if I can tell the difference between real caviar and fake caviar. But should be fun. Let's roll. Oh, glasses don't help. Oh my God, I don't know if I can tighten this tight enough. All right, there we go. Teen, please mix these up. All right, my cameraman has told me that he doesn't even know which one is which. I can find my spoon. We're gonna start left to right. First spoon of caviar.
Wow, okay. So these are incredibly mushy, very, very kelpy. There's far more of a fishy taste to this than I'm used to in caviars. It's not all that salty, to be honest, but they're very, very soft. They sort of mush apart completely as soon as you put them in there in your mouth. There's none of that kind of like explosion that I think you would hope for in a truly good caviar. Obviously, it's really good. It is kind of like salty fish eggs, but perhaps not my favorite. Next up, I should have bought some kind of palate cleanser, but what can you do? Wow, that is really, really salty. Much, much finer eggs, a real creaminess to it, a bit more of that explosion. This to me is what caviar is about. Not that I'm some caviar expert, but I do think that like a lot of luxury foods are way overrated, kind of gross. But caviar is not one of those things. I'm a big caviar fan, not that I've eaten it that much. And I mean, that to me, that is ridiculously good. Whatever that is, I'm a big fan. Okay, third one. All right, straight off the bat, that is fake caviar. I'm 100% sure. There is not a question in my mind that that is not genuine caviar. There's no real creaminess to it. There's no real kind of explosion of flavor. You can't just kind of squeeze them with your tongue and have them melt apart. 100% convinced that that is fake caviar. God damn, I hope I'm not wrong. And then finally, the fourth caviar here. Wow. And that is, again, that is really, really good. It has more of that, a bit more of the kelpy, fishy flavor than some of these other ones. And I think that the balls are once again a little bit solid. They're rather small. You get a nice, unique mouthfeel from it, but I don't think it's quite as creamy and as rich as number 2 was. But that would be my top ranked, and my second ranked would be number 2 and number 4. To me, are what you're after in caviar. My favorite though of the 2 would be number 2. To me, that is like the pinnacle of caviar. When I say number 2, I mean the second from the left, so we don't get confused. All right, guys, here we go, moment of truth. Let's see what we have. The first one is number 2. I don't think I was the biggest fan of this. It was kind of too mushy. This is the Italian caviar. There you go. Interesting there that to me, I just could tell right away it wasn't exactly what I'm after in a caviar. Kind of just way too mushy and way too much of a fishy flavor, if I remember my tasting notes correctly. The second one along, which was in fact my favorite, number 3, Vietnamese caviar. Who would have thought? There you go. I promise you guys we were fully blindfolded. This is all on camera, one single take. Yeah, it just has absolutely everything that you're after in that caviar flavor. Not overly fishy, nice, creamy, nutty flavor, great mouthfeel, perfect amount of salty balance. That was absolutely sensational. The fake caviar, the third one along here, was incredibly easy to tell. I have no idea why people think that all fish eggs are the same. Really, there is no comparison. Sturgeon eggs are, if you're after that kind of caviar-y flavor profile, easy to tell. The fourth one along, number 1, the OG, the original, the kind of pinnacle of caviar that is out there. And it is interesting that the 2 caviars that I was after, that I found to be the best, were in fact the Russian caviar and the Vietnamese caviar. And yeah, I don't think that there was all that much between them, but I do think that the Vietnamese one had just a little bit more creaminess, a little bit more nuttiness. That was the way to go. But yeah, there you go, guys. Weirdly enough, they are both belugan caviar. So it could be that the species here influences this taste quite strongly, but there you have it. That's why people are after beluga. That's why it has the reputation that it does. It is a big positive for Vietnam that they have that species here and that they are breeding the same species that is widely considered the world's best, and that it is sort of adaptable to this environment. Boom, 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 boom. Guys, one last final thank you to Fishing Clash for sponsoring this video. It is a huge help in making these kind of videos. So if you enjoyed, please click on the link in the description, scan that QR code flying around the screen, give it a download. It is a super fun game. Remember to use the code FRASERA. You're going to get a gift of $20 to play around with in game. I'll see you out there. Goodbye.
Guy, I gotta admit, this may be one of the best caviar you might find in the world. What can I say? Under this beautiful weather in Dalat, eating caviar, that's it. That's life.